Melbourne City had everything go their way in the opening stages of their second leg against Buriram United in the round of 16 of the Champions League Elite. 10 minutes in, the list of side effects of a Marcus Younis step-over expanded to popping groin muscles. Mark Jackson forced into his first change of the evening at fullback. 21 minutes in, Harry Shillington gets quite intentionally stepped on, and unbeknownst to our Australian pundits commentating off the tube for several minutes, Buriram were reduced to 10 men. And the 25-minute mark, Mark Jackson forced into his second change of the evening as his star winger goes down. 2 substitute windows burned and down to 10 in the sweltering Thai heat, and a match that could go the 2-hour stretch. There's no way Melbourne City could lose it from here. Me at about 11:45 p.m. on Tuesday night. Bloody hell. Me at about 2:15 on Wednesday morning. Melbourne City go out on penalties in the most outrageous of fashions in the Champions League Elite, and everything goes out the door that I've said on the coefficient in about the last month. Tony Popovic is back in Australia as he prepares to select his Socceroos squad for the March FIFA Series window against Cameroon and Curaçao. And it's 1v2 in the A-League on Saturday afternoon. The title decider, could it be? The Jets and Auckland on this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachie Avil. Joining me tonight is Jacob Stevens. Jacob, you're not as much of an AFC fanatic. You're also not as much insane as I am.
Yeah.
Staying up till almost 2:30 in the morning last night, watching Melbourne City lose in just the most ridiculous of circumstances. I honestly can't believe this is how it's ended, despite the fact that expectations coming into the season were maybe them not even getting this far in the competition, but having qualified the way they did for the knockout phase and then being eliminated like this, it just leaves such a sour taste as Australia wraps up its AFC competitions this season.
It's immensely disappointing, certainly. I mean, you put it perfectly in the intro. Like, it couldn't have gone much better for City to start that game. That first half was shambolic for Buriram, and you know they're down to 10. They've got 2 injuries. They've been forced into changes, and City just don't bother to like just guys like so much at stake for the good of the game in this country and City. Of maybe there's something to be said there, right, about City Football Group killing football and but like it's,
okay, that's a low blow, but I take your point.
Yeah, it's immensely disappointing, and then for it to go to penalties as well, and that's the absolute worst case scenario for City. That's not to say that they're not going to win in penalties, but you get to penalties, it becomes literally a coin flip, and it's one of those things. You've had 120 minutes of football to do something, get that goal, win the game, and see it out, and you've not been able to do it. So while it's disappointing, the result, kind of have to go, they just weren't good enough. Like, you've got to be better than that against 10 men. And it's kind of a problem, actually, we've seen with a lot of A-League clubs this season in the league. Nobody knows how to beat a team that's playing with 10 men. It's like they get complacent or just sloppy or what. I don't quite know exactly what it is in terms of the mentality, but it seems to be happening for a lot of clubs this season. And City just seem to have had the most high-profile case of that, I think.
If you're a Melbourne City fan, listen to this, and you disagree to the following statement, please let me know. And I'd be immensely surprised if there was one person that disagreed with this. But when that game went to penalties, there was no way that Melbourne City were winning it. They were done. Their race was run. And Thailand, the heat and the humidity over there, obviously players that play for Buriram will be used to that. But just the mentality, like knowing where City had been in the A-League the last couple of months, knowing the slog that they had in the 100 minutes with the man advantage before that. There was just no way. There was no chance that City were winning that shootout. That's how I felt when it got that far.
The momentum completely shifted, right? Like, because it's
massive.
Kind of even maybe you're edging it towards Buriram heading into this fixture because it's their home fixture, so there's maybe a little bit on their side, but then that just terrible first half for them, and all of a sudden it's right back in City's favour. And even through extra time, it's probably a lingering feeling of this is City's opportunity now. They've got to get it done. And then I think once a team can kind of see out a 0-0 draw with 10 men in a knockout fixture and go to penalties, they're taking that result every day of the week. And definitely, just the momentum shifted completely going into the penalties. So, it's it sucks. penalties is the worst way to go out of any tournament, because it's just, like I said, it's a coin flip essentially. But it's a coin flip in this circumstance, I think, where, Buriram were playing with 2 coins and City with just 1, because it was, that momentum was on. It was definitely not in City's favour by the end of the game, and the mentality was gone. So, yeah, it sucks. It sucks.
The way the game played out as well was very unusual. It was an extremely physical game.
Yeah.
And for those of you who probably woke up in the morning and watched the highlights, it doesn't do it justice. The amount of just pure aggression, not in a football sense, but I'm going to hurt you sense, from both ways, was insane. Honestly, I don't think I've seen a game like it in a very long time. Just by pure nature of City having so much possession with the man advantage and the way they play. A lot of it was coming from Buriram, but City were definitely not innocent on that part. Shillington and Atkinson particularly were really getting just battered. Atkinson took a couple of really, really cynical challenges to the knee and above the knee onto the thigh, and was just in the walls the whole way, and Shillington was just getting battered around, which is why he had to be substituted off. Like, he wouldn't have been able to continue with the game. And the referee, I don't know, the handling of some of those issues was strange at the best of times. I don't understand Germain Ferreira's red card right at the end of the game in comparison to the goalkeeper's little fake kick earlier, with the varying degrees of contact. That was strange to me. Kenny Dougal, obviously an Australian who plays for Buriram, he should have been sent off twice. Like, there's not even a debate for it. He was already on a yellow ticket for a professional foul. He performs one of the most blatantly deliberate handballs, breaking down an attack of all time.
This is one of those ones as well where it's like all this discussion about handball goes out the window when you see it. You're just like, yeah, what? That's every day. Like,
if you haven't seen it, go watch it, because it's not one of them where it's like the elbows poked out a little bit. It's like he reaches up with his hand,
arm moves
and palms the ball. Yeah. Literally palms the ball to stop an attack. And there was another professional foul after that he didn't get booked for. So, look, Melbourne City still played really poorly, but these were still factors in the game. And I think, Jacob, City self-define their style of play as dominating on the ball, no small part to pretty much say the opposition cannot score when they don't have the ball.
Yeah.
And this is an exaggeration, obviously, but that breaks down when the other team don't have scoring a goal in their list of objectives, which was really what Buriram were doing for 100 minutes of that game of football. And we've seen it in the A-League, their inability to break teams down, whether it be a low block or just a team that's well organised, and it came true again. Even with a man down, they just couldn't find the penetration that they needed to score a goal.
Yeah, it's just strange to me, to be honest. Obviously, I'm not a professional footballer or anything like that, but you have so much of the ball. I don't know the exact stats. I don't have them up, but it was some ridiculous amount of points during that game for City, where Buriram just didn't touch the ball for minutes upon minutes upon minutes, and you're not creating anything, and it's a problem worldwide in football, to be honest. This case of how do you kind of break down a low block, and it's not exclusive to A-League clubs, it's not exclusive to City, but it's kind of some of the solutions that pop up now are, of course, set pieces and capitalising on those. And if the team you're up against is going to foul you a lot, it's going to be very physical, you've got to capitalise on the set pieces that you get. If they're not being called, that could be a little bit more difficult. It's also, just having those kind of impact players who, maybe game to game aren't going to be the best player on the pitch, and they're going to not have that consistency, but are the kinds of people that when they get on the ball, they can just try and make something happen. And you look at City's squad and you think, well, there's no reason that that's not a possibility for them as well, right? And, they've gone out and they've made some great acquisitions in January to try and, I suppose, bring in those caliber of players, and just nothing happened. And it's almost like once a team goes down to 10, their opposition immediately goes, okay, well, they're just going to sit in a low block, so we've just got to put whip the ball in the box and just keep doing that and just pass it around and keep possession. There's no initiative, there's no intent from anybody that, in world football, like I've said, against these low blocks to actually try something different and see what works, or just take a shot, right? Just take a shot. It's like, it's all very simple stuff, I know, to say, and it's a little bit harder to do in the moment, but it's those things you look back on and you just go, you've just got to sometimes take a bit of a risk, right? I mean, you're not going to win if it goes to penalties, as we said. Like, if it goes to penalties, it's firmly in Buriram's favour. You've got to get the result in regulation or in extra time. And just kind of going with the status quo and just keeping possession and playing the ball around and hoping something opens up. That's not going to happen every time, right? It's not like, the Big Blue, right, where Sydney could kind of capitalise on victory making a couple mistakes. That's not going to happen every game. You're going to, in a game like this, a knockout game against good opposition, they're going to remain solid. They're not going to make many mistakes, and they're going to keep you out. So you've got to be the ones to actually do something. And City just didn't do that. So, it's a disappointing result, but you can't say that their performance, warranted anything else, to be honest, because it just, against 10 men, all the possession in the world and zero creativity, zero kind of intent. It's just incredibly disappointing. I should say, it's not zero intent. Obviously, they wanted to score, but it's the way that it kind of played out. It felt like they were just going through the motions a lot, and it's just frustrating to see that teams still are so risk averse, even against 10 men in a knockout fixture. Like, you've got to get a goal somehow, City, and you're just passing it around and hoping something happens. It's not going to happen. Take the initiative yourself.
There are moments where you've not beaten a line or beaten a player, but you've half got that pocket of space.
Yeah,
and the option was taken to play a backwards pass to retain possession rather than take a further risk to break a line moving forward. And look, that is the way City play a lot of the time. If they don't, and when this City team are playing with confidence, they back themselves to take that half opportunity to make that pass and break that line and create an overflow in a particular area and move the ball forward. But when they don't have that confidence, and like I think this is absolutely not all on him, but an embodiment of that idea is like Ryan Teague coming into the midfield. Like he's just looked like a player who lacks so much confidence to be able to play that pass compared to who he was last season, that when they don't have that, they just seem to fall into their shell. And it's really disappointing. And it's a very familiar story. The best player on the pitch for City consistently has been Marcus Yunus.
Yeah.
He showed it again in this match. Could have had a couple of assists if things went slightly differently. He was the only one to step up with his penalty with any sense of confidence, and it was a resounding confidence from him, and he tucked it away really well. Unfortunately for him, I think he's going to get a Socceroos call up in a week or two, but unfortunately he's not going to play any more games in Asia, which is quite disappointing for him.
Yeah, he was good. Really the only one that was. I mean, the defenders didn't have a huge amount to do most of the game. They just kind of existed. The same with Patrick Beach again. There's not much that he had to do throughout that one. I think it was Beach in goal, wasn't it? Yeah. And then Yunus was really kind of the only outfield player that had a momentary impact on the game. And I think that's kind of the problem, right? Is you got one guy, a young player who's having to do it all, and it's that's not a recipe for success. You've got players like Teague, players like Atkinson was in the trenches, like you said, Lachie, and he was copping it a lot, but he's one of those more experienced players in that side. And Arzani started, didn't he, as well on the left? So you've got him out there as well, and it's just nobody else is able to kind of go, like, follow his example and go, okay, he's clearly the one that wants to take the game by the scruff of the neck. That's fine. Let's enable him to do that. It kind of, nobody was playing around him. Nobody was playing off him. Kind of felt like it was Yunus trying to get others involved, but there just wasn't that connection there. I don't know how much of that is a case of there's been just, injuries at City like crazy. We're always talking about every week. It seems like there's another player that's out injured, and trying to build cohesion with a unit like that is incredibly difficult. How much of it was a case of you playing against a low block for 100 minutes, so you've got a lot of space, but not in any really threatening areas,
Yeah, I think part of it is that, like, they're trying to isolate him for sure, like one-on-one.
Yeah, and that's works, but in games where you can create those matchups a little bit easier, you're not going to necessarily be able to create those matchups in a game where Buriram are just sitting everyone behind the ball and soaking up that pressure, right? Like you said, there's going to be those moments where he kind of half beats a player, or he beats one and then there's a second one and he's got a little bit of time and a little bit of space to work with. But that's not kind of the situation they want him to be in. They want him to be in pockets of space with just one player around him, and he can beat them one-on-one and work a bit of magic. He's beating a player, and then there's another one there, and then there's another one, and there's another one. And it's reliant on the rest of the team, their off-the-ball movement, their ability to be a threat, to cause attention to be drawn towards them, to then create that isolation. And the fact that Arzani, Mehmeti, Teague, Atkinson, they just really weren't having much of an impact. It meant that, Buriram could just focus on Younes. They know the ball's going to go to him. They can just kind of wait for it and make sure that he, if he beats the man, that there's another one there, that if he doesn't beat the man, that they're able to kind of cut out those passing lanes. And it's just, the game became very one-dimensional from City. So, it's great to have a good player like Younes, but you can't just rely on him when nobody else is going to step up around him either, if that makes sense. Somebody else has to at least acknowledge, right, he's having a game, he's on one, we've got to support him as best as we can, not just, let's just feed him the ball aimlessly and hope he does something.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say that certain sections of the City fan base will have the dogs out for Aurelio Vidmar. Obviously faltering in the league, CFG, have never missed out on finals. That was somewhat forgivable given the success in Asia, given the fact that they qualified with a game spare, moved through into the knockout phase. But having their A-League problems leak into Asia this way, I said it off the top, it really turns the tide, at least in the short term, of what people will perceive as the failure of success of this particular endeavour in the Champions League Elite. I think for at least for a couple of weeks, it'll be viewed as quite a bitter one. I don't know. I tend to lean more towards the side that he's a championship winning coach. He's taken them to the knockouts in Asia in isolation. They're very impressive feats. I know the football has not been, in terms of the style, where people will want it. I think it would be harsh to say, like, even at the end of the season doesn't make finals, to still get rid of him then. I think that would be harsh. But there are standards at this football club, as we know.
I also wonder how much of the perspective of Vidmar is very much a goals-oriented coach in a way. And this is something I mentioned when he first joined City, is this idea of he will have a goal in mind and he will get the kind of playing group to work 100% and commit fully to achieving that goal. Whether it's to win the championship or, as it has kind of been throughout his career, has typically been in Asian football about getting good results there. Even, with his stint in Adelaide, of being, the best Australian club in Asia of all time, as it was at that point, getting them to the final and kind of uniting around that goal. And it's felt like it's kind of been the same thing with City during his tenure, where it's like, right, last season, as it became apparent that they were in with a good shot towards that back end of the season to make a run for some silverware, it was clear everybody was fully, committed to, let's make a run and let's win the grand final and let's get some silverware. And this season, it's pretty clearly, I think, the objective has been Asia. They've played their best football in Asia. There's been a lot of good squad management to make sure that, kind of his preferred 11 at any given time is fit enough to be playing in these Asian competitions. It's clearly, their league form has dropped off as they've gotten deeper and deeper in the Champions League Elite. This was, I think, his goal, was not get knocked out in the first round of the Asian Champions League Elite, but as in go deep into the competition and try and make that that stage that's hosted. Well, who knows where it's going to be hosted now, but was initially going to be hosted in Saudi Arabia, right? So I think that was pretty clearly the goal, was we can be the first Australian team in a long time to actually have a good run in the Champions League, and we can be that team, and we believe that we can do that. And for all intents and purposes, they could have been, if not for a poor performance in this fixture. So, that felt like the goal for me this season. So my problem is, can he pivot now and change that goal? And can he get the playing squad buying into that? Or is this going to just be a case of, well, we gave everything that we could and we came up short. We're now suffering in the league because of it. It's still tight in the the league, which is something that might help. They might sneak into finals, and who knows what they can do from there, cause a bit of chaos. But when you've got a coach who's so committed to specific goals and that one comes up short, it feels like it's going to be very difficult to get that motivation to pivot back towards the league now with everything that's happened. So I don't know. I'm with you. I think it would be harsh to sack him, but I think that there is, the kind of this idea within perhaps the fan base, and certainly looking at it from a neutral perspective, that motivation is going to be gone now from the club for this season. I think that they gave everything that they could to do well in Asia, and that's not come up for them. And so now they're going to actually struggle to kind of readapt to getting back into just focusing on the league and making finals and doing something there, because it's not as grand. They did it last season. It's not as aspirational as what they were trying for, and that can be a little bit disheartening. So there's definitely, you can understand that the fan base's perspective on this and why they might not want Vinmar around, but I think you've got to let him see out the season and then and see how things fall. Who knows? Perhaps they can make Asia again if things. Well, they can't really, can they now, because of the coefficient, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. I say give him another season, but I can understand why City fans are perhaps a little bit reluctant to do that.
So here's a stat for you. Since the 2014 win from the Western Sydney Wanderers, an Australian club is still yet to win another knockout stage game in the top Champions League competition. Obviously, we've seen the Mariners, the Bulls, Sydney FC in the second tier. But in top tier, full stop knockout game since the 2014 final.
Yeah,
no crazy. Australian club has done that.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's pretty clear that was their intention, was let's be the first for over a decade to do that and make a name for ourselves. And they just couldn't get it done.
Yeah. I set the target at the start of the season for City that making finals and getting to the top 8 would be a marker for success.
Yeah.
By that measure, look, they still could make finals in the A-League, of course. I think this season,
but that's
falls
definitely
below.
The lesser of the two. Of the two kind of markers, that's the lesser one. You kind of expect to make finals in a 12-team league.
You should, yeah. And look, so I think it sounds harsh. I think by very nature, in terms of what their expectations were this season as a failure, don't think it's a sackable offence. But we talk about the coefficient, and Australia had 4 attempts. The Bulls in their first knockout phase, Melbourne City in their knockout phase. After the 3 draws that the teams got across those 4 legs, convert any of those into wins, Australia gets there. They don't, so they stay behind China after this year, which means a potential playoff spot to the Champions League elite that we could have had in 27-28 won't happen. If you've watched the YouTube video, you know about Malaysia and different ways that we could end up with some bonus points, but that chase is going to go next year. We should get them next year. They lose a lot of points. Thailand lose a lot of points. Australia don't lose a lot of points relatively. So that battle continues. We might even actually start the season ahead of them, which might be a bit confusing for people. But that's multiple millions of dollars potentially into an Australian club that is now not going to happen. So
it's such a shame.
There's that layer to it as well. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm too sad. I actually do want to say a big thank you to...
Actually, I want to say you've jinxed it. Putting all this fanfare out about all City have to do is they've just got to progress, or they've just got to win a leg, and they've got it, and we jump and we get an extra slot, and if this happens and this happens, we get an extra slot, and then the 6th best team in the league can qualify. I think you jinxed it, Lachie. I think all you're pushing this agenda of the coefficient, and Australia is gonna get that extra spot. You've done us in with it.
Look, honestly, that's a very real possibility that I'm aware of. And I'm not making this up. I appreciate the multiple people who have reached out to me with their condolences for the coefficient in the past 24 hours. I hear you. I appreciate you. We'll get them next year. We'll be back. That's it. That's Asian club football done for another 6 months at least. So we can move on from that. In terms of national football, though, it is a big time. We're really transitioning into that phase now. We're now in the month of March. The Socceroos will play in a matter of weeks against Cameroon in Sydney, against Curacao in Melbourne. And Tony Popovich has been out and about around the world, in North America, in Asia, and in Europe recently that we know of as well. he's back in Australia. He had a bit of a media session on Tuesday. He'll select his squad shortly for those 2 games in what is the FIFA series. I'm not really sure what the FIFA series is. Sounds like we just get 2 games. And
they're
that's
just giving
what it
these
is.
friendlies just a name. It's just got a fancy name for some friendlies. That's all.
Yeah, and
That's
maybe
what it
they're
is.
organised through FIFA rather than the federations going direct to each other. But anyway, 2 World Cup opposition. It's getting really exciting now. Well, obviously, we've all been keeping tabs on the Matildas through the Asian Cup, and I think that's got people back into the mood of the national teams. And the Socceroos will be back in action just after the women's tournament finishes, which is exciting. I think the key storyline, and we talked about this at the time when he and Paul Ocon went to Italy to watch Christian Volpato, didn't get off the bench. But had a chat with him about the idea of playing for Australia as well. And what we said on the podcast was, don't read too much into the language of Popovic going over there to convince Volpato to play for Australia. That rung true. Popovic, they got word from Volpato's camp that they were open to having conversations. They went and had a conversation, and now it's all on Volpato. If he nominates, then he'll go on the watch list of about 50-odd players, and then if he's good enough, then he'll get selected for a squad. Popovic also confirmed on the Stan Sport Extra Time podcast that he won't be, for sure, a part of this March squad.
Yeah.
So anyone expecting that name on that list, unfortunately, you're going to be disappointed. Some other interesting tidbits. He had breakfast with Eddie Jones, very famous rugby union coach, coached Australia a couple of times, I think. Right?
What is it with Socceroos coaches and rugby coaches? You know, it's wasn't there?
Be very careful here, Jacob. Those in the northern states will not like you mixing up rugby league and rugby union, because I think Arnie's a big rugby league guy, right?
Just well, yeah, or whatever. It makes no difference to me. So.
Did you know that apparently just rugby, like the word rugby is union, but then you got to differentiate rugby league by saying league?
No, rugby's a place to me. That's you know. But,
see, I didn't know that until a few months ago. Apparently, if you say rugby, people just assume you're talking about union.
There you go. I don't know which one's the proper one. That's going to cause all sorts of arguments about that, isn't it? So
good thing we're on a round ball podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was an interesting tidbit. We seem to get lots of these little stories about high performance coaches across different sports getting together, which is fascinating. He noted some of the comments that have come out of the USA media as well, and I think there really, really is an interesting dynamic. I think Matt mentioned this at one point, but the fact that the Socceroos are going to have this World Cup build up, and we're playing another team in the group that isn't like an English-speaking Western nation, that is very rare. So to have this back and forth is actually quite unique for us. So obviously that's the biggest game of the group stage for us. And I can't wait. I think that's going to be a barnstormer.
Yeah, and it's 2 countries as well whose footballing landscape you can are kind of quite comparable in a lot of ways, and have been, you know, the MLS and the A-League, and, you know, comparing, you know, things there has been a tale as old as, well, the 2 leagues have been. So it's kind of, it serves almost as like a benchmark, like neither team will want to do worse than the other for sure. Not just because of the whole, you know, English-speaking Western nations thing, but also these are 2 footballing programs that are so similar in a lot of ways that it just feels like this is going to be a really good test for the both of them to see kind of where all these arguments that have come over the years about which is better, you know, which is better at developing players, which has the better professional league, which is this, which is that, blah, 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 blah. We're going to see that for real now. So that's the really interesting element to it. It's fantastic. I absolutely love it. You know, the US were in England's group last time out, so there was kind of a little bit there and a few jokes there about, you know, the history of that fixture. But this is, on a whole nother scale, because I think these 2 are very, very well matched sides. Maybe it's bias. I reckon the Socceroos are going to finish higher than the US. There might be a bit of bias.
Oh, it'd be so good.
That would be fantastic, wouldn't it? Especially with all the comments in the media and the build up to it. There's a real opportunity for Australia to make some Americans mad, which that's just, I can subscribe to that every single day of the week. But no, it's going to be really, 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 really fun. And, you know, for sure people will go, oh, but the MLS is still better than the A-League. And okay, whatever, we'll take that at face value. But if the national team is better, that's what proves football in that country is better, you know? If we've got better talent pathways, we've got better player development, better, you know, talent identification, stuff like that, which means that our national team is better. And that's the one that counts.
Exactly. You raise a really interesting point that the national team is often the barometer of any long-term vision or expectation of what a country
look at
can
leagues,
be.
right? Look at like the Premier League, for instance. You look at the top teams in the Premier League. How many of those are English players? You know, there's a handful here and there, but the majority of the starting 11 of most of the top clubs in the Premier League are foreign players. The Premier League is the best league in the world. That doesn't mean that English football is the best in the world, right? You know, so it's the national team is really
what
where
even
you
is
go
English football.
What even is English football? Yeah, but the national team is where you can kind of prove that, right? You can say, no, actually, it is because, you know, we've done this, and that. England hasn't done anything for 60 years, but, you know, that's beside the point. You know, this is the chance.
They made a few finals.
Yeah, well, yeah, you know, we don't talk about those. But this is the chance for Australia to go, look, this is where we're at as a team. You know, we're always overlooked because we're playing in Asia, you know, and we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere and nobody else, and, you know, nobody knows about us, but this is what we can do. So it serves as the benchmark, I think, for how strong the sport is in this country. So if Australia can have a good World Cup again, yeah, it's the stocks in the sport are just going to continue to rise, hopefully.
Particularly like against the US, like the cultural aspect, two countries that no matter what other people think of them, they will back their own for very different reasons. As Australians talking about Americans, we'd call it arrogance. They'd probably call it liberty or something. I don't know. And we have this underdog tag that we tend to find a lot of comfort in. Some would actually argue that's detrimental to the game, which is a perfectly valid opinion. I probably share some of those views, but we will go into any of those games believing that we can win. And so when those two come up against each other, you have two sides that both think the other are overhyped, both think they're going to get it done, and the fallout is going to be just amazing to watch. I cannot wait.
It's going to be so
Please, Popper. Beat the US.
If you only win one game this World Cup, let it be against America.
Honestly, yeah. Honestly, if we managed to ruin their tournament, I'd find a great deal of satisfaction in that.
Yeah.
That'd be great. And you know what? 3 points is probably good enough to qualify for the round of 32.
Nowadays, yeah.
So there we go. Let's go into our weekend look to finish off the episode. Of course, it's a big weekend. It could go a long way in the A-League to deciding the title race, the massive game. Who's it a big weekend for? I'm just going to go straight up with it. Auckland and Newcastle, they play each other. This is a top-of-the-table clash. Could decide the title fight. There's really nowhere else to look other than this Saturday afternoon slot, 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time at McDonald Jones Stadium. I'm sure the Jets will get a raucous crowd. Could they beat their record for the season again? They know that this is the game, as much as the mathematics won't support it just yet. If they beat Auckland on Saturday, Jacob, they will celebrate like they've won the league.
And for all intents and purposes, they pretty well have done. I mean, Sydney are 7 points back, Auckland 4 points back. You'd make it a 7-point gap. Like you're feeling good at that point in time with 5 games left to play. That we've pretty well, as long as we don't just lose every game from here on out, as long as we get a few points, we have won the premiership, and that's huge. So, you know, there's a lot riding on this game for both teams. From the perspective of the Jets, it's almost a chance to, not 100% mathematically, but essentially wrap up the title. And for Auckland, it's to stay in touch with Newcastle. They go 1 point behind them with 5 games left to play. That's really tight. So it's going to be that everybody should be tuning into this game, to be honest, you know, regardless of who you support, because this is the game of the round. This is what we always hope for every season as well. We want a good title fight between two good teams coming down to the last few weeks of the season where they actually end up playing each other. Doesn't happen a lot, and it's happening here. So yeah, it's going to be a just fantastic game.
Who's it a big weekend for you?
Well, I'm going to go to the team that we were just talking about, Melbourne City, because of what I was saying, where it's, can they now bring their focus and try and sneak back into finals? They've just slipped consistently over the last 2-3 months, dropping points, playing poorly in the league, almost you could say sacrificing in the hopes of going deep in Asia. Not having now done that, you've got to reset and go again and try and make finals. But they're up against really stern opposition in Sydney, so it's going to be a really big test for them. And I think that, honestly, where are they at? If they lose this, you're writing their finals off. Their finals chances off for sure. They'd be down, still stuck on 22 points. You'd expect somebody in the top 6 or top 8 to get something from this weekend and build that gap. So, if City don't want this whole season to be a complete failure, they have to make finals. To make finals, you've got to be beating Sydney here. You have to get a result here to be able to push on into the 6. And if you don't manage that, then there's really not a whole lot to play for except to avoid the cup playoffs. Do we even still have those?
No, we don't.
Don't even have those. No. So your season's done if you can't get a win against Sydney. So I think it's a massive weekend for City.
If only there was some way to increase the jeopardy of the teams down the bottom of the table.
The only thing that might save them is the fact they have a number of players who are vying for Socceroos contention.
It's true.
And that's, that in itself, at least individually, is going to be a big push for those guys. So that might be something that can still help them out as the season goes, even if they lose to Sydney. But I think for the club, this is a big weekend, because if they can't get the win here, I'm writing them off for finals this season.
Okay. Well, in a dream world, I'm going to go with the perspective of the Central Coast Mariners.
Yeah.
They are still a game behind most of the league. If they win this one against Adelaide, at home it must be said, the 2 teams below them, the Bulls, have Melbourne Victory at Amy Park, and then Brisbane are all playing the Wanderers. And you'd say, despite the fact that Brisbane are higher on the table, the Wanderers, I think you'd say, would have the most form coming into that game. So if those 2 teams continue to drop points, as they have done consistently for the last month and a half, and the Mariners go on and beat Adelaide, well, all of a sudden you've gone from a team 2 months ago, and we've covered this rise the whole way through, but 2 months ago, you're literally at the bottom of the table, your club is a mess, you don't have owners, what is going on? Mariners fans will be very confident about playing finals football if this scenario unfolds. So in a dream world, the Mariners get a win and establish another, couple of points on the chasing pack, and really lock up our top 6 as well. I can't see.
And they've still got a game in hand,
happens.
So it's you've got the 3 points. You've started to build a gap to the teams behind, and you've got a chance now to jump the teams in front of you because you've still got a game in hand. Yeah, that would be massive for them for sure.
Yeah, massive for the Mariners in a dream world, Jacob.
Ooh. It's a dream world if the Jets get the win, right? Like that's such a good story, and I know it's the easy answer, but it's the one that I think a lot of people are looking at as going, like, think back to the start of the season, maybe 5 rounds in, the narrative, even with having around the Jets, is completely different to where it's at now. It's is it this return of the curse of the cup winner, and they just go on and have a terrible league season and they're not actually that good. It was just they had an easy draw in the cup, or they're a very good side, and this is their best team in what would it be now? 8 years? Was it 2018 was when they had the final against Victory? So it's been a long time for the Jets and for Newcastle to have a team like this. And as we were saying in that first segment, if they get the win, they're going to celebrate like they've won the title, and that would just be such a cool thing to see for a city in a region that's been through so much with this team over the last few years to finally be back at the top. It would be such a good feeling for them, and you can't help but kind of smile when you talk about it as well. So I think just as a feel good story, that would be the dream ending for the Jets, I think.
I'll add on to that as well. 20k there to celebrate it on the final whistle.
Let's get a good crowd.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. Surely they are. This is the game of all games this season for them. Surely they get a good crowd.
Could be it. Could be it right here. Worst case scenario, I don't really know where to look. Melbourne City is just staring me dead in the eye, but I think my emotions have been swayed slightly by the events of the last 24 hours. We have an OG distance derby between the Wellington Phoenix and the Perth Glory. Typically, these are games that always deliver. If it's just like a 0-0 draw.
And it feels like it might go that way too with the way these two teams have been playing.
you're 10th and 11th on the table. One of you needs to win to give one of you a chance. Just give us an entertaining game. Worst case scenario is that this is just a drub, 0-0 draw. I don't want it to be. I wanted to have fun with the OG distance derby. That is a game prescribed in the annals of fun A-League games. It must continue as so.
Yeah, I think my worst case scenario is for the Victory, actually, because it feels like over the last 2 weeks now, they've had these big opportunities in big games to get one up on a fellow team in the top 6, and they've just not quite been able to muster it, right? 2 draws, that crazy big blue where they throw it away in the space of 3 minutes, and then a really tough fought original rivalry game the week before. So it's kind of, they're just holding station in 5th place. And this weekend they're playing against MacArthur, who, sure, they're just outside the 6, but they've lost their last 3 games. So this is a really big opportunity now for the Victory to finally get that win that they kind of need to keep themselves in touch with the top 4, and, you know, pray that as well the Mariners can kind of hold Adelaide back. I think the best case scenario for Victory would probably be a draw in that game, because then the Mariners aren't closing in on them, but they can close in on Adelaide at the very least. So yeah, I think it could be a worst case scenario for them if they don't win again, because they're just, all of a sudden they're going to start to lose ground to that top 4. And for Victory, they're going to really, really want to be in the fight for a home final rather than just having to settle to finish in the top 6. And, you know, the Mariners are on a storm. It just takes one result from MacArthur to turn it around. And, you know, all of a sudden then you're fighting for 6th spot, right, to actually make the finals. So, yeah, I think it could be a worst case scenario for them, particularly if they lose here to MacArthur. That could be massive. Yeah, huge repercussions for them.
All right, big weekend in the A-League, but that'll do for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Thank you all very much for listening at home. We appreciate your support. As always, Jacob Stevens, thank you. See you next week.
Cheers, Lachie.
All right, we'll be back on Monday morning for your A-League debrief. Appreciate everything you do, listening to the show. Give us a like, give us a, follow, subscription, whatever platform you're listening on. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.